Hey, welcome back to week 3 of Run Club. We're doing this, right? I am so proud of you, and I know God is teaching us more and more as we read scripture together. I've also been really excited about some of the new groups that have started this past week. If you're interested in getting connected to one, please let me know. I will be happy to help you get connected to one. If you want to start a group as well, it's never too late to start a group. I'll be happy to help you with that too. Last week we were going through the book of Job. I'm kind of glad, honestly, to be through the book of Job as we were discussing that God is faithful as we wrestle and as we face struggles. It was a very life-giving for me this past week. This week we're turning the page back to Genesis chapter 12. And again, because we're going through the Bible chronologically, we are picking up with the story of Abram. And the story of Abram really shows us that God is faithful in the waiting. And I don't know about you, but waiting is not something that I really enjoy doing. I am a very active person. We're going to make things happen, is my typical way of doing things. And when I'm put in situations where I just have to wait and trust, it is really difficult for me. And it was definitely difficult for Abram and his wife Sarai. We read throughout their story as well. And one of the things I do know is that in the waiting, that's one of the biggest areas where our faith is formed. The theologian Eugene Peterson said that faith is formed when we practice long obedience in the same direction. That as we daily choose to follow God and follow his ways and obey his word that leads to life, we practice our faith and grow our faith in him as we practice long obedience in the same direction. So keep that picture in mind as you go through Abram and Sarai's story together. Their story really starts off with God making a promise to Abram that God was going to bless him, that he was going to give him land, that he was going to give him great descendants as numerous as the stars, and that he was going to be a blessing to all nations, the father of many nations. That's a huge promise and something to really put your trust in, that God was going to do all of that through you. If God was to promise you something like that, that's a pretty tall promise and a tall order. God just isn't giving Abram a goal. He's making a covenant with Abram, a binding promise that's not based on his performance of how well he's going to do, but on God's faithful character. And God seals this covenant himself. We read about it in chapter 15 with this pot that goes through the animal parts. It's kind of strange and weird, but he's passing through these pieces alone. It's God's way of saying, I am going to carry this even if you fail. And so he makes this covenant with him, and really a covenant to all people as God is setting up the story of redemption for all of humanity through Abram. And Abram and Sarah, you find that their faithfulness to God is pretty fragile. And it's this moment of trusting God and then not trusting God, choosing their own way, or saying, things aren't happening here for us to have a child, and so we're going to make our own way. And Sarai says to Abram, why don't you go ahead and sleep with my servant, and then maybe God will bless us through that, which causes a bunch of animosity between Sarai and Hagar, as Hagar has her son Ishmael. One of the things I love about Hagar's story, to lean into this, that in all of her troubles of the situation that she was brought into through Abram and Sarai's unfaithfulness, she has this moment where she is seen by God, that God sees the struggle that she is in due to Abram's unfaithfulness. So don't miss that either in the story. One of the things I know is when I don't trust God and I try to make my own way, I typically make a mess. And that's kind of the question for us this week. We can go through, as we go through this story, and think like Abram and Sarai, how could they do that? And what is God doing? And those are all good questions to have. But one of the questions I really want us to hone in on as we read through this scripture is a question of self-examination of our own hearts, and examining our own hearts and asking the question, do I trust God in the waiting? Or am I trying to make my own way? And is that leading to a mess? Do I trust God is the question that we're asking as we read through this together. One of the things I love about Abram's story, it comes to this point where God changes his name to Abraham. It's this level of commitment that God is drawing him to, that you are no longer going to be this unfaithful person anymore. You are a new person, and you are Abraham. You are the father of many nations, and God is leaning in and fulfilling his promise through him. And I think that leads us to a time of prayer, of just continuing to examine our hearts. God, will you change me? Will you make me into the faithful person that you are calling me to be, even in times of waiting on you? I hope you have a good week, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.